Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Hi, welcome back to the studio. Again, my name is Jay. I'm the host of the show. I'm excited to introduce my co-host this evening, coming in from Australia. He calls home the land of the land, the man of the land from down under. Evis Love Heath, welcome to the show this evening.
As always, my brothers, thanks for having me on this evening.
And we have Jeff Fasano, Nashville, Tennessee, is where he resides this evening. Welcome to the studio, Jeff Fasano.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
This evening, Josh Richer is taking a night off. I think he's in what we call recovery mode. I think yesterday was the last day of production on the set of Shark Tank, and so hopefully Josh Richer will join us next week back in the studio for Real Men Real Talk Live. I'd like to take a moment here to welcome our viewers and guests coming in from live streaming in from Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn for episode number 68. If you should hear something that you like or love, we invite you to tap your love button on your monitor and light us up. If you have any questions for us, please drop it down into the comment section. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Tonight's show is one that I've been looking forward to. I proposed it a few times in production meetings. And tonight's topic is about a book called The Four Agreements that was written by Don Miguel Ruiz. And it's a book that I picked up, I want to say maybe a couple of years ago. I read it, and I found it was a very easy book to read, very comprehensible, and really spoke to me at that time. I have since picked it up today and read it again, just as a refresher for myself. But it's a beautiful book. What I'd like to do is take a moment here, gentlemen. I want to share something with you from the book, page 98. This is actually the cover of the book, The Four Agreements. And so in this page 98, he's talking about the freedom we are looking for is the freedom to be ourselves, to express ourselves. But if we look at our lives, we'll see that most of the time we do things just to please others, just to be accepted by others, rather than living our lives to please ourselves. This is what has happened to our freedom. And we see in our society and all the societies around the world that for every 1,000 people, 999 are completely domesticated. The worst part is that most of us are not even aware that we are not free. There is something inside that whispers to us that we are not free, but we do not understand what it is and why we are not free. The problem with most people is that they live their lives and never discover that the judge and the victim rule their mind, and therefore they don't have a chance to be free. The first step toward personal freedom is awareness. And so there's some words in here, domesticated. We'll kind of break that down, what Don's interpretation of domesticated means in relationship to the Four Agreements. But in any event, Ev, I'd like to invite you to kind of kick us off tonight, warm us up, light us up, and from your perspective, why don't you take a moment here just to introduce what the Four Agreements are, and then maybe we'll break a few of them down and see what we uncover in tonight's episode 68.
Yeah, thanks, my brother. And as always, my brothers and sisters, they're on the other side of the pond, here in the land down under, if you're joining the broadcast. Thank you from the bottom of our heart here on at Real Men Real Talk Live. Because as always, my brothers and sisters, without you, we wouldn't be in 68 shows going strong with a heartbeat. So tonight we're talking about the Four Agreements, my brothers and sisters. I lit up on the stream yesterday and did a quick video on this. And To be personally straight up and honest, I haven't read the book myself. I can't wait to read it, and I'm really looking forward because it really does resonate with, particular fragments within my life. And just from that beautiful passage that you've read from Don Miguel's Ruiz's book there, Jay, has really hit home with a couple of things that you talk about. I think as many of us grow up and we're starting to realize, particularly, like I said in the green room, my brothers, at the start, our freedoms are being slowly stripped away. But are they? Is it a state of mind? Is it a state of being that when we, like you said, come back to that awareness and come back to self, that we can actually understand that the real power lies within our own freedom? Not to any one person, place, or out there, but within. So what are we agreeing to, my brothers and sisters? And like Jay said, what has domesticated us up until this point in our lives? Was it the teacher? Was it mum? Was it dad? Was it the pastor? Was it the minister? Was it all the above? And how can these four agreements help us free ourselves from the bondage we've currently been living in? Because my brothers and sisters, like I keep saying, we're in this particular time where we're able to unlock those shackles from the inner bondage that has kept us really down in this prison. So I'm looking forward to diving deep about these four agreements tonight, my brothers. And what do you reckon, Jeff, diving in at the start of this show, my man?
I think what Jay read is an entire 3 shows.
That's the 3 shows, yeah, man.
Freedom. I mean, freedom. But and I can go on about freedom, but I think Ev, you just put it perfectly. I think let's start with the agreements, Jay. Let's just like open up and begin the show with the first agreement, and we can do. It would be cool if we could see what the viewers out there think about this, see who's read this, see who's in tune with it, and are you in tune with what Jay just read about freedom and what Ev just said about freedom? And where we are in this world right now, where you are within yourself, do you feel free? But I think we will unlock all of that as we go through each of these agreements.
Yeah, all right. That sounds good. I mean, the first agreement that he touches on is be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity, say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So for you guys, what does being impeccable with your word mean? What does that mean to you, Jeff Fasano?
Being what we speak.
Please explain.
being what we speak. If we're whatever we speak, it's about taking responsibility for what we speak, really being impeccable with what we speak. And I'm not talking about, all right, Jay, I'll meet you at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and I come at 6. That is courtesy, whatever. The impeccability of it, and I use this term if I'm working with someone one-on-one and I'm asking them to be in some sort of personal process with their life. I should be doing the same thing. It's really about speaking your truth from your heart, but being those words or modeling what I'm speaking. Am I really being these words that I'm speaking that are coming from my mouth, or is it just I'm speaking them? Am I walking my talk? Am I being all of what I'm talking about here to the best of my ability where I am right now in my process? So it's really about moving within and being responsible for what we say to others. Being impeccable with it. And what he talks about, especially with gossip, do you gather around with your friends and talk about people? It's really about even saying less But being with your truth and meaning what you say and say what you mean, being that, and being, you know, just responsible for what we say to others, the way we say it to others, the way we communicate to others. Are we communicating lovingly with compassion? How are we communicating, and are we truly being what we're saying to others?
Love that, brother. Love that. Yeah, man, 100% agree. You know, like, it's that authenticity, being integral to your word, how you're showing up in your daily life. With how I wanted to sort of dive in with this, Jeff, and my brother there, Jay, really understanding, you know, from the very start, you know, it says in the good old scripture, from the beginning was the word. And we've got to think about, you know, what are we speaking out into this physical reality? You know, these words are literally spelling out into the physical plane. So we've got to think about what we're speaking, what language we're speaking to others. But most importantly, like we're saying there too, my brother, what are you actually consuming? What words are you consuming? And I'm not even just talking about literally physically listening to someone. What are the words that you're consuming with yourself, my brothers and sisters? I mean, the self-talk that I help a lot of people with, the subconscious never goes to sleep, my brothers and sisters. So when we can start bringing that subconscious, conscious, like I'm always talking about, and start really digging in to some of the words that we may have been using up until this point, then at least we've got a little bit of a benchmark and a starting place to start thinking about how we can be more authentic to our word, how we can be more integral to our word. Because in the beginning, if the word, and that word was God, and you are made in the image of that God, what is your truth? Are you aligned to that true soul, that true God spirit? These are the questions, my brothers and sisters.
I want to bring this up here. Mary Kelly says self-love with ourselves. If we talk against ourselves, we are committing sin. He calls it, as in Don Miguel, he calls it black magic, speaking anything negative. But there's another component to that. You don't have to speak it. It's even thinking it about yourself or thinking about others. He refers to black magic as the dark, and then there's white magic, which is coming from love and kindness. And really what this all comes down to, really the foundation of this book, is that he talks about domestication. And domestication is what some of us know as, we refer to it as the download that we get in the youngest years of our life, usually typically between ages of 0 and 7. It happens at our home. It happens at school. It happens within church and synagogue. It happens even on a playground. And the domestication is the belief systems, what we're taught, right from wrong, based on our family's belief on what is right and wrong. And what he also dives into is not just what's right and wrong, but how what we believe that is the only right. And then a lot of us take it to the grave. In other words, we spend the rest of our lives in this download or domestication. If you imagine, when we have a wild animal and we bring it into the home and we want it to become a house pet, what do we do with that animal? We domesticize it. We domesticate it. We teach it how to behave. We tell it how to sit, how to lay, how to come, how to front. Some of the commands we may give to a puppy, right? We're doing the same thing with our children. And what happens in the home is that we're taught about rewards and punishment. And we're rewarded for good behavior and we're punished for bad behavior. And he breaks it down further and explains that when we're punished for bad behavior, in the 4 agreements, his perspective is that that's all about conditional love. And I know that sounds extreme to many people that may be listening right now, but is it really? As a young child, you get punished for all the things you're doing wrong. On some level, you kind of attach to that conditions. I'll love you more. I'll say nice things to you if you behave. And how many homes do we have parents that say very mean-spirited, hurtful things to their children? And as a parent, we don't realize how that is part of the domestication. That's the download that the child gets. So I was on a trail today and I heard a mother say to her, I don't know if it was her daughter or if it was her niece, but she called her the B word. And this girl couldn't be more than maybe 10 years old. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that that's an endearing word that you want to call a 10-year-old. As I'm seeing a little infant in a car seat sitting along the creek as well. So, this is the message that we're giving our children. We're teaching them how to be domesticated. And then we grow up, and now we're the adult, and we're repeating in our minds the same download of the same tapes that we heard at home and at school and in religion. So being impeccable with the word is not just the words we speak to others or the words we speak about others, but it's the words and the thoughts that how we treat our own self. What do you make of that, Ev?
Yeah, and again, brother, you're talking about those inner beliefs, all of that programming, which sinks into that subconscious mind. Yeah. It's just so important, particularly when you're talking about that intergenerational trauma and healing, because like you said, my brother, we generally speak out what we've been shown, what we've been taught, what we believe.
Yeah.
So the first step is really erasing or coming back home to self to be aware, but erasing some of that BS that we keep talking about.
Yeah.
All the conditioning and programming from mom and dad, which is what Jay read at the beginning. Freedom is looking at all that, but being conscious and aware that is what the wounds of the child is. The wound of the child is the conditioning and the programming from mom and dad that doesn't serve, that never served.
Yeah. Check this out. Hey, Jeff, I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. But Bruce Weintraub coming in from New York, actually, we go back to when we were in college. He was one of my fraternity brothers, still is. Bruce Weintraub, welcome back to Real Men Real Talk Live. Bruce says the media also domesticates our beliefs. And I agree with that. I mean, we get the download as adults. Even as adults, we are domesticated. We're not done being domesticated.
Well, what they're doing is and know that this is something that they know. So what is happening there is it preys on the wounds of the child, as I was just saying. It incites the wounds of the child who are looking for mom and dad to take care of them, to keep them alive. And if they don't, it moves into fear.
Yeah.
There you go.
And all fear is walking into the unknown and not knowing you're safe in the unknown. It's needing to be safe in the unknown. So it preys on fear. It all does. Just think about what maybe mom and dad said to you. If you don't do this, this is going to happen. So it plays into a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old's safety. Yeah. All fear is walking into the unknown, needing to be safe in the unknown. And that's where the fear is. I'm not going to be safe in the unknown. So mom and dad condition that because all a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old thinks about it is life and death. Mom and dad sustain my life. So then what happens as if we're not healing that, if we're not in a process to bring our consciousness and awareness to it, like I just said, and I've had to have that shown to me over the years, then what happens, you stay, as Ev just said, you stay mired in these old beliefs because it's not our truth. We have been led to believe something through the conditioning from mom and dad. I'm going to say that again. We have been led to believe something through our conditioning to mom and dad. And if we move into our truth, our innate truth is we are free. We are individuals. We have to relearn that and reparent those children. So what that gentleman just said was, and it's, if we want to go there in the media or what anybody else is going to do is going to play on your wounds.
Boom.
On your wounds. And your wounds are, will I be safe in the unknown? The thing you fear is not the unknown. You fear that you won't be safe. Go to your 5-year-old right now and talk to your 5-year-old. That's what we're talking about here. So let's go back to impeccability of the word. Within that, if mom and dad said, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe with me, you're safe, then the conditioning is I am always safe.
Well, here's the challenge with that, Jeff. That sounds like what you just described there is nirvana.
Well, of course. If mom and dad said that, then we would know that. But my mom and dad never did that because they never thought they were safe. They never healed that.
There you go.
They never healed that. So what do we have to do now? What we have to do now is we have to go in and reparent that child, take that child by the hand and say, you are safe from our adult perspective. But how many people, like he just said, 999 people out of 1,000 are living through the wounded child's perspective in this world?
Yep. Ed, you want to jump in?
And I think it even goes even deeper from what we're saying there, my brothers, because we're talking about what we're saying, from that wounded child's perspective as a parent, but it's how we say it. You see, it's the tone, it's the sound, it's the at peace that makes the child comfortable. You could have a whole world going on outside of you full of war, but, like I've experienced it as a child. When I heard all of that stuff as a kid, and then my mum would come in and just put us to sleep and say, it's going to be okay, boys, it's going to be okay. It was the tone and the softness and the pitch of the sound that emotionally put me at peace. So this is where it gets deep, my brothers and sisters. We've got to think about the emotions, all right, that are putting us in that safe place.
Yep.
And that's called nurturing.
I want to jump onto the second agreement right here because we could spend 4 weeks on the agreements if we could agree.
We can have a 4-part show here. We just can keep on going on the impeccability of the word.
I want to jump into the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. I'm going to repeat that. Let it drop down. Let it sink in. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Ev, what do you make of that?
We're all living universe. Jay, you've got your universe happening over there. Jeff, you've got yours down there. Our brothers and sisters out on the chat, that's your universe. This is my universe. So when you buy in, we've talked about energy before, when you're buying into someone else's universe or reality, you've got to ask yourself, why are you taking it personally? because you've agreed to their universe. So my example in the video yesterday was, you know, I was taking racial slurs as a young kid personally because I was buying into their belief. All right. So until we do, like we keep saying, come back home to self, how are you going to be able to take anything personally, my brothers and sisters? We've got to ask ourselves, what are we agreeing to?
You know, I love that, Ev. This is my universe. That's your universe. And I might go off topic, but if we look at that, is everybody in their own universe and your own energetic universe, not a bubble, but here I am sustaining all of this in my own universe or space.
Check this out, Jeff. Bruce says here, an insult is only an insult if you believe it true. Otherwise, it's meaningless. I'm going to expand on that. I think it's a brilliant statement there because really we get to ask ourselves in that moment, is it true? Like for me, that's a way to kind of rope myself back in or reel myself back in. If I let too much line out there and I'm out at sea and I've let 100 yards out, I mean, I need to reel it back in because it's very easy, even for someone who is doing the work daily, personal development work, self-discovery work, to get lit or activated or triggered and take it personally. And what I have, I'll acknowledge this right here, right now, gentlemen, is that when I'm taking it personally, it's usually not my chronological age self. It's my younger self.
There you go.
It's usually a wound from my younger years that is still there, that's still below the surface, that still has some healing to do, that goes right to the old story that was consistently perpetuated. And it revolves around self-sabotage, really, because ultimately what I know today is that when somebody is showing up and they're misbehaving or they're being hurtful, mean-spirited, and they're directing it what appears to be at you or I, it's not. It's their own anger, frustration, resentment, hurt, pain, wounds that they're just transferring out onto the universe or to you or I, because it's that they don't know any other way to process it or to release it.
And the thing is, Jay, I mean, it is their truth. You know, you're speaking your truth. I'm speaking mine, Jeff's speaking his. It's a truth. It may not be your truth, but it's their truth. The thing is, do you want to live their truth?
Ev, wouldn't it be more, not so much their truth, but that's what they've been led to believe?
Yeah, it's a truth.
You know?
It may not be yours.
And they're just doing or saying something about me, Jay, you, based upon their conditioning program and belief systems, whatever universe they're in that moment and where they are in that moment. When someone says something, a way to look at that, I guess what we're talking about here, and not taking things personally, because there's two ways that things can be communicated. So I guess we're moving into how this may overlap from impeccability of the word. When somebody says something to us, and the way they communicated could not, we cannot take it personal. If somebody says, "Can I share something with you?" that we may not like, but it triggers us, more often than not, if it hits us in a place that it triggers us, more often or not, what they said was true. There's some truth to what they're saying, because if there wasn't, we wouldn't take it personally, and we would just say, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, 100%, brother. It's definitely triggering an inner wound.
Right.
But, you know, if we're ever looking outside, as we know, brothers, it's ego mind, it's ego space.
There you go. There
So
you go.
until we come back to that self, that soul, that higher purpose, that higher self, it's always going to be ego trying to fuel itself from the outside world.
And the need for everyone to validate and gratify us. So we're seeking outside of ourselves. What he means by taking it personally, if somebody says something and we don't want to take it personally, but maybe we do, maybe there's a part of us that still is seeking that validation and that gratification and love outside of ourselves, meaning everybody's got to be nice to me, and that in turn validates who I am.
So how could we flip it then, brothers? What's a great tool, Jay, from you? What's a great tool?
I want to just do two things. CJ Johnson, welcome to the show. I love to know where you call home, and welcome to Real Men Real Talk Live. CJ says mindfulness goes hand in hand with this agreement. Take a third person look, and boom. I mean, totally get that. And that takes practice, because if we're not accustomed to pausing and reflecting, we get roped into that other person's agreement, which is based on their domestication. So I'm going to give you a quick example. If you show up, you have an appointment, a meeting with someone, and they show up late, and they don't even give you a heads up they're running late, and you sit around for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, it could even be sometimes up to an hour. Who knows? Sometimes longer. How often do you take it personally? Like, what I mean by that is, let's, for example, say that happened to me this week. I'm sitting there and I'm going to myself, wow, this individual has no respect for me. They're not respecting my time enough to let me know in advance that they're late. Now, for me, my first reaction is to take that personally. And my reaction is my ego going, who do they think they are? Like, they have no respect for somebody else. Now, I get to reel myself back in that moment and realize it's not about me. That person that showed up late most likely is late for many appointments, for themselves. Are they even showing up for themselves? And so that's when I get to shred or flip the script and say, stop it. Stop it right now. Don't go there. It's not about you. Don't take it personally. Them showing up late is how they show up for themselves. And it's my choice in the future, knowing that, if I want to engage in that relationship. And or when they come in, I have an agreement in place. I created an agreement knowing that that's their behavior. And the agreement is look, we got a 45-minute meeting set. Now, if they eat up 20 minutes being late, then we have 20 minutes less in our 45-minute meeting. It doesn't mean that I extend my meeting out with them and then that backs me up the rest of my day. No. That's not me taking care of myself. That's not me honoring my agreement of being impeccable with my word. So you see, I don't have to take it personally. And it was beautiful because the other night I went on a walk after dinner, and I had time to process that experience. And it's not the first time. It happens with many people that show up late. And I got to really pause and process it and go, okay, there's a really good chance I'm not going to have expectations that person's going to change their behavior. I have to change my behavior going in. And my behavior changes. We're going to go in next time, if there is a next time, with a set window of time that we're meeting for. And then when they show up and it's not even acknowledged, not even, I'm sorry, I'm late. They just show up. It's like, okay, well, here's where I'm at. We've just eaten 20 minutes of our time up. So I got 25 minutes to go. And then I'm out. Say it with love. Don't say it mean. Don't say it in any way other than just matter of fact, got to go. So I want to do is jump forward. Hopefully that was a good example, because I'm sure each one of you guys has either shown up late or you've been on the receiving end of someone showing up late and us taking it personally. I know again, it's very easy to get sucked into that vortex of taking it personally.
I was doing a photo shoot though. Well, what I wanted to mention too in all of this is I don't know how many artists we have out in the audience, but when you're living your life as an artist and whatever that means, putting your work out there, and me as a photographer, boy, you better learn not to take things personally, because you're going to have every criticism of your art from top to bottom, inside out, every which way.
Oh, yeah.
People looking at you. And somebody just asked me this question the other day. How would you feel if somebody said to you, Jeff, I really like you, but I don't like your photography? And he asked me that question. I said, well, that's actually happened many times in my life. And I've got great, incredible stories that people have actually said things to my face. And it's about, I don't take that personally because it's art. I just they don't dig my work. So that's fine. And another thing, Jay, is being late. I remember when I was living in Los Angeles and I had a photo shoot with a very well-known musician in this world. And that musician showed up 3 hours late. 3 hours late.
What did you learn what did you learn about yourself?
Well, I couldn't leave because I was getting paid to do the shoot from a magazine. So I hung out and did whatever I did. But the interesting part is this gentleman came in and never even apologized for being 3 hours late.
Okay.
And I just remember that as you were talking about, I just remember sitting in a very well-known, famous studio in Hollywood, and 3 hours late, and he came in with this entitlement, and he just and it was, and every time I see him now or not, and I see I'd always, it triggers that, you know, I just remember that. I don't know why, as you were speaking, that all popped into my head.
Yeah, it's another great example right there. And what we know is, you know, it's how we receive it and what we do with it moving forward.
There you go.
But what he also told me, and this is really interesting, folks, too, what he told me is a lot about himself.
Absolutely. But then it's for us to decide if we want to engage with that individual again.
Exactly.
Or compensate yourself for those 3 extra hours that you're going to be waiting.
Yeah. There you go.
Next time, charge him three more hours of work that while you're waiting for him to show up. I want to jump us ahead to the third agreement, 3 of the 4 from the 4 agreements. Don't make assumptions. Don says, find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Ev, what do you make of that? What does you mean by that? With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life.
I love that, what he said. I love already what I'm hearing about this book, because like you can hear, it's the simplicity of how he's explaining things. And to me, you know, what we're talking about there with these assumptions, you know, to me, they're a story. They're a story that you're telling yourself. Now, where is that story coming from? It's coming from a past experience lodged from memories that now you're going to assume something in a particular situation that really has no proof or credibility. So from just asking, like you're giving that example there, a person, rather than making that assumption before making a particular, you know, verdict or agreement to what that assumption may be, is just so simple. But we love to make assumptions, you know. The brain just wants to go off and it wants to make that story based again on those past memories and beliefs that we're talking about. when, you know, it's so simple just to ask?
That's great. And you know what? What I'm seeing, I'm seeing how each one it overlaps.
Yeah, 100%.
For example, the dude was three hours late. Jay's story, he was 15 minutes late. As we're sitting there waiting, what assumptions are we making? What story we are telling ourselves about what's going on, and all these assumptions of why this person hasn't shown up yet, yada, 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 yada. And then what we're doing is we're taking it personally. So it's about that story that we're making up of a person and why they do what they do, why they're late, this and that. So we're making up this story constantly. And then we're assuming all of this stuff about somebody, as opposed to being there and just like, let's look, and the person shows up 20 minutes late, and we've already gone into all the story and the assumptions, and they come and they say, oh my phone died and this happened. I really wanted to call you and I'm here. And I apologize, and this and that. And that just killed all of our assumptions in the story that we made.
I like what CJ says here. He says, I don't think it matters if they are true or not. Tell us more. Tell me more there, CJ.
But the thing is too, Jay, I mean, if the brain goes looking for a negative assumption, why can't we just make a positive one?
Given the benefit of the doubt.
And this is what I'm talking about, because, you know, I didn't give my example back on the whole late thing. I mean, I traveled back 10, 15 years ago when I was back in the old going into the fashion side of things, over to Morocco to find and source some of the best cotton in the world. Now, when I went to one of the factories over there, I didn't realize what I was in for. I was in for someone that made me wait 3 hours, my brothers, downstairs to source just some of the fabric from their factory. And yes, I took it personally at first, but then the assumption became positive, and I said to myself, how bad do I really want this? Maybe universe is testing me to ask me, how bad do I really want this? So instead of allowing that brain, that mind to flood off into those negative assumptions, can we flip it around, thank that external projection or that reflection that we're projecting to be able to create a positive assumption? Another question.
Love that. I love that, Ev.
What do you think about that, Jay?
I think I like what Elena just said here. Elena, welcome to Real Men Real Talk Live. Love to know where you call home these days. She says, "What if is all assumption." I love that as well. All the what ifs. I want to share a story about an assumption I had. I've shared it with you guys before. I think maybe in a production meeting, but there was a period where I was communicating with one of my sons, and we were kind of in and out of a let's say of the relationship at the time. And I sent him a note, a text, and I didn't hear from him. And that became days, and it became a week, and it became 2 weeks. And I created a story around that. And at that time, the story was, I guess he's back out. He's out of my life again. And of course, I didn't have to go through, I didn't have to, I chose to put myself through a whole low vibe, a whole low energy assumption story I created around that, right? I took it personally. Week number 3 comes, I still haven't heard from him, and boom, I get a text. And he says to me, Dad, hey, just picked up your message. My phone was off at the time. I was traveling overseas on business, and I did not have my phone. I wasn't picking up. my regular text at the time.
There you go. There you go.
Everything was fine. Yet I spent 3 weeks creating a living hell for myself around, once again, my boys out of my life.
Mm.
That was an assumption I made.
A story.
So when this things happen in our life with someone or in a relationship or whatever that is, perhaps in that moment, instead of assuming, instead of making it about us, we can open our minds and our hearts and say, you know what? I'm not going to assume anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to, make it about me. I'm not going to be narcissistic about it.
There you go.
What I'm going to do is wait, have my feelings about it, because it's going to bring up stuff within us, and then see if that person contacts us. And then what he's saying with communication, open communication, see what happens, exactly what your son did. And then we're letting go of the chains, or what assumptions, how assumptions bind us and keep us in a story. So we're making up this story, or we're making up the story why this person hasn't reached out to us when they said they would, why this person hasn't called. I mean, I just went through that in Los Angeles. Yeah. And I could be making up a story of why that person is, when they said they were going to call, never called. Why this person, or is it about me? Did I say something? Did I do this? Did I do that? All of that is assumption, and just even feel that energy, assuming they're doing this, it must be because of me. Feel that all of the energy we put into that, as opposed to just being in the moment and say, okay, well, they might be where they are in their inner process. Who knows what's going on? If they do call us, then we can communicate back and forth. If they don't, it's not about me.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Jeff. Moving right along, Jeff. I want to welcome Carolyn to the program tonight. She says sometimes assuming is as simple as not asking someone to join you for dinner because you think they may not want to come. Now, that's a beautiful statement, and that's the truth. I know that happens for many of us, but I think there's a deeper assumption there. We may not invite them because we're concerned if we do invite them and they decline, then there's a part of ourself that's going to feel hurt. Is that possible? So we assume we create we have a whole dialogue, a whole script in our head why we're not going to invite them. Because we want to prevent ourselves from taking it personally and getting hurt. How often has that happened, if not in our later years, in our younger years of our life? I know I was witness to that. I want to jump ahead, guys, to the fourth agreement, which is always do your best. And what Don says on this one is your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstances, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret.
Yeah. This is just turning up. This is just showing up in your life. This is putting action behind those, words that we're talking about at the start. This is you actually coming from that authentic place. And as opposed to living out for reward, just live out for progress. Just show up. But we have to behave in a particular way to be able to do that. And that's through action. There
you go. There's the second A. The first A is awareness. The second A to really implement the 4 agreements is action. And, my interpretation of what he's really talking about in this agreement, always do your best, comes down to, you mentioned the word reward. There's also another word called award. And many times we're striving to do our best because we have a goal in line. We have a goal in place. We want to get the promotion. We want to make more money.
Mm. Isn't
And
that
so we're working harder. We're thinking that's doing our best to make it to the next level in our career or in our life. And I don't think that's what this fourth agreement is about. It's not about that type of doing our best. What it's about is doing what is aligned with you from an integrity perspective, aligned within you from what you love to do, not what you feel obligated to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're referring to, my interpretation and how I live my life today, most days is that doing my best doesn't mean I'm working harder, and it doesn't mean I'm working smarter. That was my motto for years in corporate America. I wanted to work smarter, not harder. But I wasn't even okay with that one.
Mm.
What I am at peace with today is doing my best is how I show up. How I show up at home in my relationship, how I show up in my relationships outside of my home. It shows up in the work I choose to do today. It shows up in how I am of service to others, including podcasting Real Men, Real Talk Live and the other podcasts that I do. It's about being aligned and with your heart space and not your head space, and doing your best to show up for yourself in all aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you began with, am I going to show up and do my best because this is what I want to get out of it? And if I'm not getting out of it, why show up? There's an attachment to showing up and doing best. I'm going to get this. This is what's going to happen if I do my best. That's outside of ourselves. What you just said at the end, Jay, is my integrity and who I am. I'm going to show up being the best of me. Mm-hmm. And then if I'm showing up with talents and gifts, like I'm showing up as a photographer, my talents and gifts as that is an extension of me being the best of who I am in that moment. And there's no attachment to it.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Well, check this out, Jeff. Elena says so brilliantly in this moment, there are times when people will do their best for the approval of others.
Yep.
You nailed it. That is part of this agreement. That's the lack of living in freedom.
Yep.
That's us selling our soul to be loved, to be approved, to get someone's acknowledgement, to get the affirmation.
Get the validation.
That's the reward that we may not have gotten at home when we were kids.
There you go. There you go. There it is.
So we're still seeking it as adults to get someone's approval that we are good enough. We are smart enough. We just maybe are enough.
Well, it's not as adults that we're doing it. It's that wounded little kid inside of us that has not become aware and cognizant of those behaviors that the wounded child is still perpetuating.
There you go. Check this one out, guys. Robert Brooker lights us up tonight, lights us up every week consistently. Tonight he drops this bomb. He says, working for the approval of others is a good way to die young.
There you go.
Wow. Amen, brother. That was me. That was what I did for 35 years of my corporate career.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for the approval of others, and it nearly killed me.
So what I want to say to that is, are you ready to let that die? Are you ready to become aware and conscious of all of this that we've been talking about tonight, of all of your behaviors, all of your stuff? Are you ready to become conscious of it? Move through it, reparent that child, nurture that child, show that child a new way, and then let all of that die.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, 100%, my brother.
Elena says there's a difference between saying you did your best and believing you did your best.
Or knowing you did your best.
So
There you go.
how often when we say we've done our best, that's coming from ego space. That's coming from our head. That's not coming from our heart space, right? That's an ego response.
Mm.
And in any event, gentlemen, we're approaching 6 minutes before the hour, and we've kind of touched on all four agreements. What I'd like to do is take us into our next segment of the show, musical magical chairs. And tonight, I'm just going to leave it open for you guys to, let's just say, to hit each other with a question or two that comes forward. Jeff, I'm going to put you in a hot seat. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to answer the question.
Oh, you're going to ask me to ask a question.
No,
that's more of a hot seat than answering the question.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Before we go there, I just absolutely love this book. If you haven't read the book, I encourage every person to gift it to someone else. Buy it for someone else, if not for yourself. Maybe pay it forward and it'll come back to you, or invest it for yourself. And it's an easy read. Pretty much reread this book almost 20 pages from the end of it for the second time today. I just read it in one day, sitting in a hammock along the creekside in Sedona, Arizona. On the back of the cover, what the book says is, in the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz reveals the source of self-limiting beliefs that rob us of joy and create needless suffering. The Four Agreements offers a powerful code of conduct that can rapidly transform our lives to a new experience of freedom, true happiness, and love. Ev, you got a question for Jeff to close us out tonight?
Jeff. I mean, we've listened to some beautiful Four Agreements tonight. I think about being impeccable to your word, not taking anything personal, not making assumptions, doing the very best that you can. What is something that you've been agreeing to within your life that you could now disagree to agree with?
Ooh, wow. Ooh, deep.
A bunch of things just came up. Taking things personally. There's times that I still do. And through my conditioning, or what I agreed to, is that I'm not good enough. I'm moving out of that. I'm valuing myself more than I ever have in my life. But there are times that I do take things personally, but when they initially might happen, the old conditioning of what did I do? What did I say? Pops in, and it does. And I'll be honest, it still pops in. I have to regroup in that moment, and maybe even move into a blind spot of it and start questioning myself. What did that person said this, did this, and they didn't do it. What did I do? What did I say? And I start making all of these assumptions about my behavior and this, and I start taking it personally. And then I move into this story, and I can move into a blind spot of that. Okay, that is my wounded little Jeff thinking that and making it about me. Okay, and making, so I do that from time to time, and it might take me, talking to you guys, and then all of a sudden you move me out of that blind spot. You make me see the blind spot. Wait a second, Jeff. Or I get it myself. So then I become aware and conscious of it. So there is still at times things that may happen that, because I was deeply conditioned and programmed, that the reason why mom or dad didn't do this or did do that was because of me. So that is there's a root still in there somewhere that I'll do. For example, I'll use what happened in LA. When I was in LA, saw a person that I hadn't seen in 15 or 20 years and wanted to get together. I'll call you. I'll do that. Yeah. None of that ever happened. What I did right away was, I started, did I say this? Did I do that? What did I do? Me. And it started to drive me crazy until I stopped and said, wait a second. It's not about me. Whatever transpired in all of that, I was showing up in my heart space, being the best I am at that time. Whatever the behavior of that other person is not about me. But it took me a little bit to see my wounding, see that conditioning, see where I was making it about me. I hope this is answering your question, because what I'm demonstrating from time to time, it still pops up within me.
There you go. Beautiful.
And so that's still there, that there's still a part that I'm agreeing to, that was my behavior. It was about me, that other person did or didn't do, or did whatever they did or didn't do. So I'm making it through the wounds of the child, and our children, and the children, or the child inside of us always thinks it is about them.
Yeah, you got it. Jeff, I want to take a moment here. Jeff Fasano, I want to thank you for showing your vulnerability and just being honest, being raw in this moment, being real. It takes a lot of courage for us to acknowledge our truths, not especially on Real Men Real Talk Live, because we've had 68 weeks in a row to practice that. But it's simple, not easy. And I think by you acknowledging that this is your truth, and you still get to practice and show up and practice change behavior through awareness and action. There's where hopefully someone's hearing something that they need to hear tonight. Is that even though we're where we're at, we still are human, and we still have to work through the old agreements, that we were domesticated within our homes. I want to take a moment here to acknowledge something that Karen said, Jeff. She says, yes, the blind spot, but I reel myself in and think I don't know what is happening in someone else's life. We make assumptions from our own perspective. And that, right there is big time what we've been talking about all night, because we make it about us, and we forget that it's never about us. It's always about them. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what they're emotionally going through, mentally, physically, or spiritually.
There you go.
But yet we immediately resort to our old behavior, our old thought processes. And so it's a lifetime commitment. I don't think it's a one and done. I don't think it's a light switch on, light switch off. It's coming up on 6 years now on this practice of coming home.
Love it.
Thank you for sharing that, Jeff.
Just think about this lifetime and all our other lifetimes. We practiced that what we need to unlearn. So it's about creating a new practice of practicing all of this new stuff. What's in this book, what other books, what we're sharing. It's a whole new practice of loving, honoring, and valuing ourselves in a way we never have. That's what we're practicing. We're practicing love. We're practicing honoring and valuing who we are in these moments. And we really can't forget that, folks. We really have to remember that the choices that we make in life are all based upon how much we love, honor, and value ourselves in each and every moment, and make those choices based upon that, and always know that we are, as we move through this process called life and move within, we are always in a negotiation at times with what is being presented that is new to us, that is asking us to step out of these comfort zones, that is asking us to expand our awareness and consciousness to this.
Yep.
Well, we're in this negotiation because we are moving in and reparenting a wounded child within us.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Deep, brother. Deep.
Deep. All right, Jeff, take a nice deep breath, man. Catch your breath.
You know, Ev, I'm going to ask you the same question that you asked me.
Oh, wow. Come on, Jeff. Get a bit more creative, man. Hit me with something, man.
Well, my original question, what I thought we'd do was to look at these agreements and see where we're excelling in the agreements and see where we are having some challenges with an agreement. Like, do we have a challenge that I do assume that my communication skills aren't the greatest? So basically that's what you asked me. What are my old agreements with myself? So in any of these agreements, I want to say, what have you mastered, but where is there still challenges within these agreements?
Beautiful question, man. Beautiful. You know, looking back on those 4 agreements that we've touched on tonight, I think they're all solid to be implemented into our daily lives. And I really can't wait to read this book now. It's got me really excited because of the simplicity nature of it. Because, you know, I think when we look back on, you know, this particular show, this broadcast, we've all, you know, had something to resonate and be able to really understand what he's talking about through this book. And I think in that first one, Jeff, you know, the challenges, particularly within being impeccable with my word, you know, I had to know what that word was. You know, I had to have a very strong purpose, a strong intention behind what my word was. And I was floating through life as a young fella. You know, I was being distracted by the outside world, left, right, and center. And that, you know, environment included the people I hung out with, you know, which made me go into bad choices within my life as a young fella. It included, you know, me having a particular purpose on what I wanted to do here, which really only up until this point in my life, brother, I've become clear of. You know, so being impeccable with that word was always a challenge as a young fella because, you know, we go back to that conditioning, we go back to that program, that domestication that the brother's talking about within the book. And until I became self-aware of exactly what he's talking about in being impeccable with your word, my word was based on old programs. There's no doubt about it. It was based on to what I was modeled. It was based on what I was shown, and it was based on what I experienced. So through the inner work, I've been able to create the word that I'm now impeccable with because I know I'm aligned with it through my actions. Now, that second one that you're talking about there, not taking things personally, like I mentioned at the start of the broadcast in my video yesterday also, as a young fella, again, you know, like we go through so much of these beautiful lessons and gifts through our younger life, if you want to call it that, experienced a lot of racism. You know, I experienced a lot of racism through school. I experienced a lot of racism on the football track or the soccer ground, as you guys might know it over there. And why I was taking it personally, when I look back on it now, is because what I was shown, and particularly within our original community here, the big racism program is still out there very strong. And I think if we just look back last year, you know, we were experiencing the racism program again. But now the challenge has become actually my victory, because that particular racism that I was experiencing was only a trigger to the emotional damage, trauma, the abuse that I had to heal, not only for myself in my own life, but generationally, brothers and sisters. So I thank people on the outside world that may be triggering me personally now. We are true gifts for each other, my brothers and sisters. When we start to look at each other as mirrors, we start to really learn a lot more about ourselves. So for that third one, yeah, man, this shit gets deep. That third one, not making those assumptions, like I keep saying, my brothers and sisters, the story is what it's all about. The story. We've learned, we've heard his story. We're currently living in the Miss story. Miss story, her story. It's all the unknown, isn't it? It's all uncertain. But that is why it's the key to make up the positive assumption that I'm talking about of your story. And it's only then, my brothers and sisters, that we can start writing our story. And to finish on that fourth one, turning up the best that you can, or just being the very best you can, my brothers and sisters, you've got to know what that best means to you. See, it was never a challenge to me, because I was always aligned to enjoying whatever that was to be the best at. You know, I enjoyed being out there on the football pitch. I enjoyed being out there on the cricket pitch we do here in Australia. I enjoy being around people that I love. I enjoy doing the things that I do, and that's being the best that I can, because it's aligned to who I am now. And what I'm saying here is, my brothers and sisters, and we talked about this on the show a couple of weeks ago now, is that a lot of this book already to me is about us being back here in the present. We can't keep going out here, lending our story out here. If we're taking things personally, you're out there. If you're not impeccable with your word, you're out there. If you're making assumptions, you're out there. But if you're being the very best that you can, you're in here. You're in the now. So yeah, my brothers and sisters, there were a couple of challenges through this story, but up until this point now, I'm living out my story. And on that note, my brothers and sisters, I hope that answers your question, Jeff.
You know what I loved? You know what I loved, Ev? What I loved? If we could all use every relationship we have or anything that's going on with someone else, and as a mirror, if we could all do that, it works in a way for us to look at our challenges or our wounding, but it also works in a way to see how much we've grown.
Yeah, man.
It's not always about looking at what I have to work on. That will be there. But if we can look at light, like you just said, that is an amazing, we should write our own little book here. I mean, just walking through life, something happens with another person that may activate us or trigger us. Use it as a mirror right away to say, oh, am I maybe still perpetrating that or myself? Or, man, look how much I have grown because I don't do that anymore, but I did. So it's also a way of moving from a place of looking at seeing how much we've grown, how much we've progressed, and where we are in our personal process, and also looking at it. So using, not everything has to be, and I don't like to use this word, but not everything has to be a negative mirror.
There you go.
It could always be a mirror to see, wow, you know what? I'm not perpetrating that behavior anymore. Man, look how much I have grown within myself. Thank you for mirroring that back to me.
Beautiful. I love that.
Love that, brother.
So doing a vital check-in and kind of assessing your progress and acknowledging that
Yeah,
from a
True.
space of humility, not from ego.
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Mhm.
All right, gentlemen. It's
What do you reckon,
about
Jeff?
that
What do you
time to
reckon,
put a
brother?
pretty bow on the show. So
I've
who's gonna
already
be
asked a question, Ev. I think I'm going to.
All right, let's dig into these 4 agreements again and what's going to be special for our brother, who's with the most, setting this beautiful platform for our brothers and sisters. Mr. J. Rothman, as the host with the most here on a Real Men Real Talk Live, you know, I think definitely all of these, like Jeff mentioned, agreements tie in with each other. What's one very valuable tool, brother, after listening to, you know, everything that we've talked about tonight, that you could share with our brothers and sisters out there just to be the very best that they can in their life right now?
run for the hills?
You got a lot of hills out where you live.
Yeah, that's why I get out. You know, what I want to say is that for me, I can only speak from my experience. I was one of those 999 people out of the 1,000 that was unaware of how I was living my life. I was just surviving. I was struggling. Although on paper it appeared as though I had a pretty good deal. But for me to break the chain, of me to begin on my awakening of creating my own 4 agreements, which are 100% in line with these 4, I had to first be willing to surrender. I had to first have the awareness that I needed to surrender. And for me, it came early on. I may have been part of my spiritual awakening in a hospital in 2015, or within a week or 2 or less within that time period, when I had a clear understanding. You've heard me say it. Everything that I thought was the truth in my life was a lie. And everything that I thought was a lie, in fact, may be the truth. And that, in that moment, that was me surrendering the belief system, the domestication that I received as a young boy at school, at church, at synagogue, on a playground, at home, in the media. I finally surrendered and understood that for the first time in my life, I could say these words: I don't know. I just don't know. That was the ultimate surrender, because I was paid. Part of my compensation was to know, was to have the answers, not just for my performance, but for performance for 250, 300 employees. I was expected to know and have the answers at my home. And it was all based around a domestication that took place in my home as a child. It happens in every home. By surrendering and acknowledging that what I'm talking about was that the belief system that had led me through 54 years of my life, I hit a dead end. I hit a wall. It was do or die. Do or die. For me, that meant having the courage to change. For me, that meant having the courage to surrender all of my ideas, all of my thoughts, and say, I'm here. Show me a new way to live, God. being impeccable with your word. What a joke. My word meant nothing to most people. Because it meant nothing to me. But I tell you what, once I had that awareness, and I said this and I'll say it again, I knew the man I had become, and I hated myself. But I didn't know who I was. These 4 agreements are totally aligned with the life I live today, the choice I make. When we were children, we didn't have a choice. We were taught. We were given the ultimate gift, an inheritance of a belief system, domestication in our homes. It is a choice today as an adult to stay living in that. If it's serving you, God bless you, take it to your grave. But if it's not, now's the time to cut the chain. Have the courage, surrender, take action. Stop by reading this book, The 4 Agreements. Continue to show up. And know it's possible that not only can you create your own belief systems of what's right and what's wrong for you, but you could also begin to believe in yourself. Believe to begin to honor yourself, begin to love yourself, begin to see yourself and understand yourself. That is your gateway to freedom. It's simple, not easy. Oh, it is worth it. It is absolutely worth it. These are tears of joy. Jeff, you mentioned it earlier in the program, really about assessing your progress. When I was deep into my healing to save my life, I assessed, not every day, but probably on average 2 or 3 times a week. I wasn't asking other people what they thought. I was asking myself. Because for the first time in my life, that's all that mattered. What mattered was what I thought. I love you guys.
Whew. Damn, Jay, thanks for that, man. I actually picked up 6. You gave me 6 tools, man. Thank you.
It's
Wow.
oh man, we'll do another show on the next 2 afterwards. I don't know what they are other than surrender and courage, but I tell you what, I hadn't read this book until I was, I think, 3 years into my healing journey, and the only thing I could say is that if you didn't believe in a power greater than yourself, then send me a private message and I'll tell you why. That's why I believe in it today. I didn't have a power in my life. I was self-willed. But when I read this book and I couldn't believe what I read, I was like, the universe gave it to me in my own way. It opened me up to receive it before I read the words written in this published book here. It's possible. I love you guys. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you heard something that you liked or loved and you want to continue to support us, We are accepting donations. Would love to support the program and to continue the resources to put forth week after week. We're now in our second year coming on live. You could Venmo us any donation that you feel from your heart space that you feel brings some value to you this week on Real Men Real Talk Live. I love you guys. If you haven't picked up the book, pick it up. Make that small investment for yourself. I think it's under $10, man. US dollars, USA.
Beautiful.
We'll catch you guys next week. Peace and blessings. We'll see you next week.